Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining me in this conversation. Here's where we are. Elon Musk and Donald Trump are proving every single day they do not know what they are doing, and they do not know what our federal workers actually do, and they don't care if their firing spree ends up burning down something really important. And it's not because they're just out of touch billionaires, though they are out of touch billionaires, because maybe that would explain why they don't care if firing staff who help childcare and Head Start centers keep their doors open, making it harder for parents to get childcare, or firing our Social Security workers, which cuts off our seniors from help with their benefits, or firing our BPA workers, which will raise energy costs for our families. But still, even people like Trump and Elon, who take private jets everywhere, should understand that you do not fire FAA workers weeks after the deadliest crash in decades. That's, to me, is just common sense. But Trump and Musk have shown they couldn't care less, even if lives are at stake. Unbelievably, they have fired public health experts who are working on bird flu and even nuclear weapons experts. If Trump and Musk stopped and used a single brain cell for a single second, the danger of firing nuclear experts willy-nilly would have been obvious. But no, it was only after a public outcry, when everyone pointed out what should have been obvious, they tried to reverse course and hire some of them back. Just this week, they fired another 1,400 staff at the VA, people who are helping serve our veterans, gone for no reason. And here's the thing, they are still trying to fire even more people with even less forethought. The Trump-Musk firing spree continues to be as surgical as a wrecking ball. First, it was that scammy fork in the road email, which they've been awfully quiet about since their latest email. Then it was firing everyone who was new or who was newly promoted. They didn't target low performers, they targeted some of our highest performers. And now they want to lay off anyone who didn't respond quickly enough to an email that they sent out over the weekend. Of course, we all know they are not going to read millions of responses, which is unfortunate, actually, because Elon and Trump clearly do need to learn a thing or two about what our workers actually do and how important it is. They obviously do not have the slightest idea. And now it is being reported that they just want to chuck all of these responses into some AI they have cooked up for firing people. Honestly, with as thoughtless as Trump and Musk are sometimes, I can almost see why they're so desperate for artificial intelligence to do the thinking that they don't seem to be capable of. But that is no way to treat people who have dedicated themselves to our country, often for years. And many of them, by the way, are veterans. That's right, nearly a third of our federal workforce are veterans, people who have literally put their lives on the line for our country. And now we're all seeing what Trump and Musk think about that. And let's be clear, these mass layoffs have nothing to do with government efficiency. In fact, they will do the exact opposite. Trump and Musk's reckless firing spree means veterans waiting longer to get their disability claims approved, slower review of new drugs and medical devices, slower response to natural disasters, fewer people who keep our skies safe for the flying public, and the list goes on. President Trump and Elon Musk may not actually care who they fire, what these workers do, and what pain and danger it will mean for our families, but I do. I understand it. And unlike them, I actually want to focus on this conversation on what our federal workers actually do and how firing them en masse without rhyme or reason hurts the American people in a big way. So today, I want to give the floor to some dedicated federal workers who can talk about the work they were doing before Trump and Musk sent them packing for no reason, and why it is important for all of us. Because these are not just the people who keep America going, they are some of the people who make America great. So with that, I want to turn it over to three people who have been fired to share with you what their stories. And I'm going to start with Emily. Emily, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you so much, Senator Murray. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Connor, and up until February 14th, I was employed by the Federal Transit Administration. I reside in Shoreline, Washington, and I came to the federal government approximately 11 months ago, 5 weeks shy of finishing my probationary period, with a history in project management and grants management at Washington State. Prior to that, I even had a career in healthcare. And for those who don't know, FTA works directly with transit agencies to enhance safety, maintain infrastructure, build new construction, sustain operations, expand systems. And most of that is done through federal formula grants. And so when I say formula grants, I'm talking about funds that these transit agencies are entitled to by law that is appropriated to them by Congress. I worked with Region 10, which covers Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska, and all of the tribes within. And my job title was a grants management specialist. So my entire job was helping these transit agencies get access to funds that they need to run their public service systems. Again, funds that they are entitled to by law, and to do oversight on these funds to make sure that these transit agencies are following the law, serving the public in ways that they promised, and making sure that they're spending these federal dollars responsibly. So traditionally, FTA is really insulated from politics. Public transportation support is bipartisan. Something like 87% of all transit measures last November passed in red and blue states and red and blue areas alike. And traditionally, FTA is actually really understaffed. We came into this administration with 750 people-ish. And because of that, everyone worked really hard. There's just not enough people to do the work. And at FTA, I worked with some of the hardest working people I've ever met. And I feel like that's saying a lot because I worked as a healthcare professional in the ICU during the hardest years of the pandemic. FTA, in the blink of an eye on February 14th, lost 10% of their staff. We're talking about 75 people, everybody on probation, fired under fabrications of poor performance. And now that they're gone, whoever's left is stuck picking up the pieces of what is literally an impossible workload with no transition plan whatsoever. The impact that this has had specifically on Region 10 is really prolific. Region 10 is a small office with only about 30 people, and they entered this administration with 4 recently vacated positions, lost another 5 people in the terminations, and now 2 to the deferred resignation offer. So we're talking about in the matter of a few weeks, the Region 10 workforce is decreased by a third. We're talking about their grants team, which is supposed to be made up of 11 people, being down to 4 people doing the work of 11 people. We're talking about their tribal transit program is being completely decimated. Every single person working on that program is gone. And the years that they've spent building up trust and relationships with these tribes is gone. We weren't even hit the hardest in our region out of all the regions. I believe it was Region 7, but one of the regions went from 17 people down to 6 in one day. So you can't tell me that all of these people are going to be able to pick up those pieces and hit the ground running. The impact of this and the fact that there's too much work is going to lead to a lot of impact on transit agencies and on the public. The oversight on the use of federal funds is going to dwindle. We won't really be able to tell if transit agencies are following the law. Transit agencies are going to struggle to get access to their funds because FTA works on a reimbursement basis. So these transit agencies have to spend this money and then they can get access to the federal dollars to actually get reimbursement for it. And ultimately what this is going to do is it's going to push a lot of these agencies into financial hardship. It's going to have impact on their riders. So we may see decreased safety, decreased reliability, reduction in service, route cutting, possible fare increases to make up for deficits. And ultimately, they may struggle to pay their own workers, and it may lead to their own layoffs. And this is going to have really big impacts on taxpayers and voters across Washington State, because voters in Washington State have literally passed transit measures and been paying local tax into projects that have been promised to them that are supposed to be funded really significantly by FTA. And this may ultimately lead to delays in these transportation projects, reductions in scope, or even a potential lack of delivery altogether. So we're talking about real life impacts on everyday people, regardless of political beliefs, regardless of affiliations, regardless of how people voted. And the ultimate price for these sudden and chaotic staffing cuts is that the American people will pay for it, literally with their time and their money. So next time their bus breaks down, the brakes go out on a bus, their light rail is late, their route gets canceled, it will more than likely be because of this. So I want to urge people to think about what they want and need from their federal government, because I can't think that hamstringing agencies that now can't do the vital work that they need to do to keep this country running is what they're looking for. And honestly, I really want to remind people that federal workers are civil servants. They're helpers. They work to serve the American public, and they take that role really seriously. And now that there aren't enough people left to do all the work, there will be ripple effects across the entire country in small and large ways that people just don't understand yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Let's turn it over to Sam.
Thank you. I just want to thank the senator and her staff, my colleagues, and the media for giving me a chance to speak today. Um, Before being legally terminated, I was an interpretive park ranger at Lake Roosevelt National Recreation Area here in Washington State. And I'd also actually recently served at a detail appointment at Jimmy Carter National Historical Park in Plains, Georgia, where I had the honor to serve during the funeral services of the former president and had the distinct honor of standing in formation with my colleagues and saluting his casket in front of his boyhood home. My duties as a park ranger, an interpretive park ranger, mainly revolve around assisting visitors who come and visit the parks, educating them, working with school groups, conducting outreach events, providing programs, really enhancing the experience of visitors who come to our national parks. But the most important thing I did was educating visitors about safety in our national parks. National parks are, because they are wild and free, they are, it's at times dangerous places. So without me on the job and my colleagues like me, it will increase the danger to visitors in our national parks, and it will string out, the already stressed out workers that remain. Being a park ranger was my dream job for me and one that I was really good at. I've recently been selected for promotion to a supervisory position that I was unable to fill because of my illegal termination. And my termination came in the form of an email from someone at the regional office who I had never met, who had never evaluated my performance. My supervisor and my division chief did not want me to be terminated. For myself and other fired workers, the impact has been really significant, especially here in Eastern Washington, where the federal government employs so many people through the Park Service, the Bureau of Reclamation, the Forest Service at the Hanford site, and all other, all sorts of other places. Um, for a lot of government employees in land management agencies like myself, um, you might live in government housing. I lived in government housing at the time of my termination, which means I now have fewer than 60 days to find new housing in a very rural area. So I've essentially been made homeless by this. And if we don't find housing, we'll have to move, as will other federal workers. So there's going to be an economic impact to these areas. A lot of federal workers also have a spouse who's a civil servant or who is in the public sector. My wife is a teacher, and we're worried that if, this administration continues down this path, that her career will also be in jeopardy. And I have colleagues who both partners are federal employees. A lot of us are also worried about what the next few months are going to bring. I would be incredibly grateful if an appeal went through and I was granted my job back and my legal termination was rescinded. But a lot of us are worried there's going to be a decrease in funding for our agency and that formal layoffs will be on their way. In fact, just before I got on this call, I saw a notification that the Trump administration and Elon issued a memo outlining that formal RIF procedures are going to be coming. So even if I get my job back, new employees are often the first on the chopping block when it comes to a formal reduction in force. So I'm worried that there's going to be this whiplash back and forth where I might get my job back and then just become jobless again, which is very traumatic. What has already happened in regards to employees getting laid off is going to absolutely have an impact on American citizens. And that impact will only worsen if the administration continues to dismantle the federal workforce. I worked for the National Park Service, and we were just that, a service. The Park Service exists to do the incredibly challenging job of both preserving America's treasures and sharing them with the public. Kind of a contradictory thing, but thousands of us do it with a smile on our face and for less compensation than we could receive in the private sector. The Park Service really exists to help make and keep Americans happy and preserve everything that is great about our amazing nation. Without me on the job and people like me, the existing staff will be stretched thin, safety issues will absolutely arise, and the services that American taxpayers have already paid for won't be present in our national park sites. I've already heard of visitor centers being closed and programs being canceled in Colorado and Arizona, here in Washington and elsewhere. And me and my colleagues in the NPS and my colleagues in the federal service, other civil servants, we just want to serve. We want to serve Americans and to be part of what makes America an amazing nation. And I hope to be able to continue to do that and help make America great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it. Katie?
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Senator Murray and to everybody who's here for listening to us today. It's been just a few short weeks, but it feels like a very, very long year already. I, at Bonneville Power, was one of more than 100 probationary employees that were terminated. There's a misconception out there that probationary employees are new, especially at BPA. That is not the case. Personally, I started my career at BPA as a contractor and have been there for more than 11 years at this point. But for my probationary period, I was 10 months into a 1 year term and was let go. My role as the management and program analyst was to oversee our electrical and non-electrical trade and labor, or craft workforce. These craft contractors are the electricians, the linemen, the material handlers that supplement our federal employee maintenance and construction crews responsible for maintaining and constructing the power grid across Washington, Oregon, Western Montana, and parts of Idaho. I was the sole individual that was responsible for overseeing and maintaining this program. There's nobody behind me that does this. While I was not what was considered a mission critical worker, I provided contract mission critical resources to our mission critical employees, the transmission line and substation maintenance crews that maintain the power grid and respond to minor and major power outages. So essentially, I supported the folks that keep the lights on for us in the Pacific Northwest. The more than 100 probationary terminations, plus several hundred separations and retirements that are a result of the deferred resignation program, or the fork, is causing significant impact on BPA. The remaining employees are having to pick up the critical workload that they may not have been previously trained on. And this is in addition to their current duties, plates that were already full. They're having to find more room to get this stuff done. Depending on the work group and the staff loss, workload is expected to double for some of them. In addition to the excess workload, staffing shortages will lead to increased overtime and travel costs to get severely limited crews out for critical maintenance work and to respond to system outages. BPA response times to power outages in some locations may be delayed as our crews are shorthanded and overworked. Staff shortages will also force already planned power grid enhancement and expansion projects to be delayed, projects that were intended to strengthen our power grid stability. These staff shortages will not just be felt in the present term. For instance, our electrical apprenticeship recruitment and hiring for 2025 was canceled. It takes 4 years to train these employees to be at full capacity. So this single year delay will be felt for many years to come. In addition, there's the morale, or the non-existence of morale at this point. It began to drop with the cancellation of positions due to the hiring freeze a few weeks before these new employees were expected to start in work groups that were already understaffed and had critical work that needed to be completed. When the fork was presented, we had to start saying goodbyes to people that we had worked with for years and to start reassigning their workload. We had the return to work order come out, and that started leading to talks about relocation for our folks that are remote and what's going to happen. Then came the firings of our probationary employees. How the remaining employees found out was showing up to work the next morning to meet with a meeting that basically said, hey, everybody that you worked with, who you appreciated, who you relied on, is gone. And there's no goodbyes. And now you got to figure out their work as well. Now we've got whispers of an impending RIF, in addition to these employees who are still there having to worry about losing their job simply because they're not going to respond to an email request about what they're doing during the last week. All of this to say, our taxpayers need to care about this, especially for BPA, because BPA is self-funded. That's very important to note here. BPA recovers all of its operating costs, including employee salaries, my pay through the sale of electricity and transmission services to both public and privately owned utility districts. So the termination of any BPA employee does not save a single taxpayer dollar. All of these actions have only succeeded in diminishing BPA's ability to accomplish its mission to supply reliable and affordable electricity and operate and maintain a stable and reliable power grid for the Pacific Northwest. I'd like to close by saying that, these probationary terminations had no merit. There was no reason for them. They've accomplished nothing. But that's not the only reason that I'm speaking out today. I believe in what BPA does. I love BPA. I love its people. I believe in the mission and the culture. An environment was created there that made it an exceptional place to work. You loved to come to work every day and you believed in what you were doing. And our workforce is a group of hardworking, reliable, and dedicated individuals, and every single one of them are proud and honored to support the BPA mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And before I turn it over to the reporters, I just want to thank each one of you for your work on behalf of all of us in America. And I want you to know that I am extremely disturbed by the chaotic way that this administration is putting the agencies that you work for, but the people that you serve in real jeopardy. So thank you for sharing your stories and helping us all understand what the impact of this is. With that, I will turn it over to Naomi for questions from the press.
All right, if anyone would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function and please say your name and outlet when I'm calling you. And we will go first to Don. Unmute.
Hi, this is John Stang. I work for Cascade PBS, which is the former Crosscut News website. And I have one question for the senator and also want to talk to Katie a little bit. For the senator, you were part of a February 19th letter to Chris Wright about the BPA cuts. And there was a February 25th, you and the other members of the congressional delegation asked for an answer by February 25th, which was yesterday. Have you received any answer?
John, we have not. And this is one of my frustrations with this administration in particular. They are creating complete chaos across every region, our state included, and not being responsible and accountable to members of Congress back for information about what they are actually doing. I'm going to keep pressing, but it is just irresponsible what we are seeing from this administration on many levels.
Okay. And for Katie, I am going to be the stereotypical cliched reporter talking to you.
Okay.
Can you tell me when you received your layoff notice, whether you had any advance notice of it? And here's my most stereotypical question. How did it affect you emotionally? How did you feel?
Whew. So my termination was on February 13th. I received a call from my manager probably around 5 or 6 that night that just said there's a wave of terminations coming. And at this point, we don't know who they're going to be. So that email will come to your work email by 8 p.m. So for the next several hours, I was online doing work, waiting for this to come through. And that is how my manager and I both found out that I was terminated, was by that email. It's been awful. There was no, obviously we've heard rumblings about probationary employees and, things could happen, but, I think that we also knew that there had to be a reason, there had to be a performance basis or poor performance basis to move forward. And that in my 11 years at BPA had never been a concern. And I know that is true for the majority of my fellow terminated coworkers. So it was blindsiding. It's been an emotional roller coaster, and it's just very disheartening because you spend 11 years um, working with people, and now you don't get to see them every day. They don't get to see you. You know that your work's not getting done, and when you're a high performer, that is a horrible feeling to know that your work is now going to have to somehow fall on somebody else who's already overworked and doesn't have the capacity to do this in addition to their work. And um, it's horrible for me, but it's equally horrible um, for the people who are still there.
John, I want to
Thank you
add
very
one
much.
thing. We are
Go ahead.
hearing from literally hundreds of people who were treated the same way as Katie and Emily and Sam, that they got this letter that said they were being fired for poor performance. That has impacts beyond just the emotional ones you're hearing and the fact that they've lost a job. But in many of those who are trying to collect unemployment, it is hampering them from collecting unemployment. This was not about poor performance. This was just a line item, decide to use the word probationary, which impacted different agencies in dramatically different ways, but clearly was a huge blow to all of these people who have worked so hard for all of us.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Robert.
Hi, this is Robert Mittendorf with the Bellingham Herald. I wanted to direct a question to Sam. Thanks for being here. We have a national park and a national forest here in Whatcom County where my newspaper is located. That's the North Cascades and also the Mount Baker Snoqualmie National Forest. You said that your job was, helping people enjoy the full experience of their visit to a national park, which is, something that will be missing possibly for people who visit our area. Um, could you elaborate a little bit more on some of the other services that people might be missing out on, such as will this affect like campground reservations, cleanliness of restrooms, trailhead maintenance, or trail maintenance, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So it'll affect every part of the national parks mission. Before I was illegally terminated, we were already having conversations here at Lake Roosevelt about how every single person's going to have to start, if this proceeds, into the summer, into our busy seasons at national parks, every
Mhm.
person's going to have to walk around with a washcloth and a roll of toilet paper to restock the bathrooms. Every person's
Yeah.
going to know where the nearest dumpster is. Typically in the Park Service and the Forest Service as well, each park's divided into a couple of divisions. That's usually visitor services, maintenance and facilities, law enforcement, and maybe your resources, as well as the fees division. It depends on how that specific park structures it. So for me, our park, I was the only person that was illegally terminated here. I have heard of some of my colleagues at North Cascades. But yeah, absolutely. If you call into a park and you need assistance making a reservation, there may not be anyone there. If a campground is damaged in severe weather, the maintenance and facilities division may not have enough people to repair that campground. National parks are often responsible for road maintenance and transportation maintenance within the national park, and that's usually either contracted, which a lot of those contracts are being froze or reversed, or it's the responsibility of the national park itself, and so they're going to have fewer staff. There are going to be fewer people doing wilderness patrols, meaning there's going to be fewer people out there literally saving lives. There's going to be fewer park rangers at entrance stations and visitor centers to warn you that, hey, this trail that you were planning on going on is dangerous. There's going to be fewer park rangers to rove around a campground and tell you, by the way, we've seen a black bear or a grizzly bear or whatever in this
Yeah.
area, so you need to make sure to be safe. So there's going to be, across every aspect of the national parks system, there's going to be major impacts because of reduced staffing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll go to Dave with Keep.
Perfect. Hey guys, Dave Furtado over at Keeper. I appreciate you guys taking my questions here. I just had two for the senator. The first one is this isn't the first time that you've done press conferences where you're sharing stories of those who are being affected by these mass layoffs. So, given the chaotic nature of things going on in DC and how quick news cycles are changing, ending, and starting up again, how important is it for you to continue to keep the stories of those impacted up on the forefront by doing these conferences and showcasing, these people are everyday Americans being affected?
Dave, this is really important to me because I literally am getting hundreds of calls and my staff is being contacted by hundreds of people who have the same kind of stories that you're hearing. For people who may not know somebody who works at a federal agency or who may not realize that they actually rely on somebody who's a federal employee, it's important for them to understand this impacts them and their lives, as well as just being a decency of our country and what's going on. So I think it is important to raise the voices of people who are being fired so everybody understands this isn't somebody else. This could be your next door neighbor, it could be your friend, it could be a family member, it could be nobody you know. But the fact is that all these workers do something every single day to make sure we are safe, we are secure, we're protected, we have a light rail to go on if we want to. We have parks to go to if we want to. We have energy that is reliable and turned back on after a thunderstorm or a lightning storm like we had the other day. And these are the people that are being laid off randomly, indiscriminately, without purpose.
Alrighty. And my other question is also for you, Senator, but also for the other folks on the panel here. Amid the situation where we've seen judges blocking some of these executive orders from the administration and then the administration ignoring some of those rulings, are you guys worried about, continued rulings being ignored? And if so, how can we ensure the pushback on, these firings and layoffs or any other orders are going to be taken seriously as we move further into these, the first 100 days?
Well, that is an absolutely critical question. And yes, we are seeing the courts side on the side of workers in almost all the cases, in all the freezing of the funding and everything else. But it takes a few days. And then, of course, this administration is appealing a lot of those rulings. So the courts are taking time. Again, what we are trying to do is hold the administration accountable and just as importantly, to let people everywhere know what is going on so they raise their voices and let their members of Congress know this is unacceptable to them as Americans.
Thank you. And it sounds like we have time for one more question. If there's anyone else who'd like to raise their hand. All right, our last question will come from John.
I couldn't quite hear. Is that for me, John Ryan?
Yeah, John.
Yep.
Thank you very much. First, for Katie, would you say that electrical reliability has already been affected, or are these more kind of potential concerns as things continue into the future more?
I think it's already starting to be affected. The fort came out, so we already are short-staffed, so there's that issue. But then the fort came out, and all of these folks, we find out, are going to start leaving through their own accord. But we had to start adjusting for their work because they're going to be out March 1st. And then with all the folks that got terminated just a couple weeks ago, it's here and now. Plus, we have the hiring freeze, which is impacting our contract side as well. So we can't even supplement for the loss of the federal employees at this time with contract workers. So I think it's already being felt. It'll just kind of snowball from here on out.
Yeah, John, I'll just add that I talked with a number of the public utility districts in the state of Washington. These are in our rural communities. They rely on BPA for power, for maintenance, for getting the power back on. They were citing some very real experiences and concerns about the impact in their rural communities. And I'll have my staff get in touch with you. Perhaps we can have you speak with one of them as well.
Thanks. And then for Sam, you mentioned I believe, National Park Visitor Center that has already been closed in Washington State as well as other states. Do you know what that Washington State example was?
I don't know if I have a Washington State Visitor Center that's been closed, but I know there's programming that has been canceled or has to be readjusted or reduced. I can't remember if I've seen a specific visitor center been closed. And I guess I should clarify when I'm referring to closed, I'm referring to like reduced hours heavily. I know Dinosaur National Monument in Colorado and I believe Saguaro National Park in Arizona are the two that I've seen most significantly. There's a number of park sites here in Washington State, and so I don't remember which one I saw make some sort of post about an adjustment in hours. But pretty much every national park has had to adjust what public services they are already offering to visitors. Our own park, I was supposed to be arranging an event celebrating the fur trade history in our northernmost district in the Kettle Falls. From talking to my former colleagues, they're discussing either canceling or severely reducing the scale and scope of that event because there's no one left anymore to coordinate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. That is all the time we have today. Appreciate you all having on. We'll make sure this video is recorded widely and get it all out.
Thank you all very much for sharing your stories. I know how difficult it is. Thank you.